Hi, welcome to our Ancient Paths, where we are sharing the gospel by shedding light on the Jewishness of Jesus, his first century disciples, and the writings of the New Testament. In Luke 1 and 1 through 4, we read, "For as much as many have taken in hand to draw up a narrative concerning those matters which have been fulfilled among us, even as they delivered them unto us, who from the beginning were eyewitnesses and ministers of the word, it seemed good to me also, having traced the course of all things accurately from the first, to write unto thee in order, most excellent Theophilus, that thou mightest know the certainty concerning the things wherein thou was instructed." And in Acts chapter 1, verses 1 and 2, "The former treatise I made, O Theophilus, concerning all that Yeshua began both to do and to teach, until the day in which he was received up, after that he had given commandment through the Holy Spirit unto the apostles whom he had chosen." Now, it has long been understood and an established fact that the Apostle Luke, or the disciple Luke, I should say, because he was not one of the original 12 apostles, but the disciple Luke wrote the books of Luke and Acts. He wrote the book of Luke first, and then the book of Acts. And we know this because he makes mention of a former letter in Acts 1, 1 and 2 that had been written. Who was the recipient of these letters? Well, in both Luke and Acts, we read in the opening part of the letter that he is addressing one to whom he refers as most excellent Theophilus. Who was this Theophilus, and why should it matter? Join me today as we explore this topic. Whoever this Theophilus person was, it should be interesting to us to know, because it seems that he was interested in the way. He was interested in knowing the life of Yeshua and all the things that transpired throughout his life until he was received up into heaven. In Luke chapter 1, verse 4, it states that he was being instructed or taught concerning these things. Now, even Bible commentators like Gill has this to say about whoever this Theophilus was: "That thou mightest know the certainty." The end the evangelist had in writing this gospel and sending it to Theophilus was that he might be more strongly assured of and more firmly established in the truths of the gospel. The Vulgate, Latin, Syriac, and Arabic versions render it that thou mightest know the truth, that is, the certain truth of things. The truth he did in some measure know before, but Luke's view was that he might have a more certain knowledge of it. Both truth and the certainty of it may be intended. So the Hebrew word signifies both truth and firmness. And the word here used signifies such a certain evidence of things as may be safely depended on, even of those things wherein thou hast been instructed, signifying that he had been hitherto taught the rudiments and first principles of the faith in Yeshua by word of mouth, and he had taken them in upon the evidence they came with and the authority of those that instructed him in them. And now he sent him in writing this account to increase his knowledge, strengthen his faith, and to give him such a sure proof of things as might preserve him safe in the belief of them from all doubting and defection. Having finished his preface, he proceeds to the narrative itself, which begins as follows. Now, except those were the words of Gill in his commentary, except I changed it. I did not say Christian religion as he does, because it was not a new religion. I used faith in Messiah. So keeping all of this in mind, Christian commentators have wondered for a couple of thousand years who this Theophilus person was. All commentators agree that he was some very important person. That is why that Luke refers to him as most excellent Theophilus. Many Bible commentators say that he must have been a Roman government official, or at least a nobleman, a civil magistrate, or perhaps a prince or senator. However, they also agree that no mention is made of a Roman official or civil magistrate by this name in any literature. So who was this man, and why did Luke feel it very important to write to him 2 different letters that we have preserved in the New Testament and explain to him about the life of Yeshua, his disciples, and in a precise and concise manner? Well, I would like to give you an answer to this perplexing question and to explain to you why this is important for us to know as Bible believers and followers of Jesus Christ. The answer to this actually should change the way that we read and relate to the books of Acts and Luke. Multiple Jewish records, including Josephus, record that Theophilus was indeed a high priest of Israel from 37 to 41 AD. He was the son of Annas the high priest and the brother-in-law of the high priest Caiaphas. We should know who both of these, Annas and Caiaphas, were from the writings of the New Testament. They were very significant in the life of Yeshua. Historical records also tell us that one of the first things that King Agrippa I did when he came to his position of authority was that he replaced Theophilus as high priest and placed there Simon instead. These records also indicate, and the Bible tells us, or the Bible doesn't, but the records indicate that Herod Agrippa came to power in 41 AD. All of this corresponds. Herod Agrippa was over Judea from 41 to 44 AD. In addition, since Theophilus was a high priest, or had been a prior high priest, it would explain why Luke addressed him honorably. Oh, excellent, most excellent Theophilus. He had been a former high priest, or perhaps even the current high priest of Judea, or of Israel. So why is this information relevant for the serious Bible student? Because historically, as well in modern times, Christian scholars believe and teach that Theophilus was a Gentile, and as such they claim that Luke and Acts were clearly written to Gentile believers. In fact, many commentators state that Luke and Acts are clearly the most Gentile books of the Bible. They also teach and believe that Luke himself was a Gentile convert to Christianity, or at best a Gentile convert to Judaism and then to Christianity. Most believe that Luke was the only non-Jewish author of the New Testament. However, what if this is not true? What if we have made some assumptions that clearly are not true? I will discuss Luke and who he probably was shortly. It should not be shocking that a high priest of Israel was curious about the way, or that one would even convert to that sect. For we are told in scriptures in Acts 6 and 7, and the word of God increased, and the number of the disciples multiplied in Jerusalem exceedingly, and a great company of the priests were obedient to the faith. Now, if Theophilus had indeed been high priest just a short time earlier, he could have been one of the priests that came to believe in Yeshua. Could it be that he was a convert to the way? Well, if he had been a convert to the way, that would certainly explain why Herod Agrippa I was so anxious to get rid of him as soon as he took over his position that he was appointed by the Roman emperor to be over Judea. It would explain why he wanted to depose of him very quickly. For we know that Herod had problems with the followers of the way. In Acts 12, 1 through 3, it says, "Now about that time Herod," this would be Herod Agrippa I, "the king put forth his hands to afflict certain of the assembly, and he killed James, the brother of John, with the sword. And when he saw that it pleased the Jews," this would just be the Jewish leaders, not all the Jewish citizens, "he proceeded to seize Peter also. And those were the days of unleavened bread." Now, a little bit of historical study, and one will find that King Herod Agrippa I had issues with followers of the way because they did not recognize him as King of the Jews. This was a title that had been given to him by Caesar, one that he was very proud of. Even though Agrippa was indeed about 1/4 Jewish, his grandmother was Jewish, he was not the rightful heir to the throne. Yeshua was, and his followers, the followers of the way, certainly knew that. Agrippa was not a descendant of Judah, and he most certainly was not their king, regardless of a title given by Caesar. And neither was Herod the Great, his grandfather, who was also given the title King of the Jews. As many of the common people in Acts 12 and 22 and the priest of Israel cried out about Herod Agrippa I, the voice of a God and not of a man. Josephus tells us that they not only cried that out, but they cried out to Herod Agrippa I, "You are our brother. You are our brother." In other words, many cried out, "Yes, you are our king. You are our king. You are a God and not a man." Many had great aspirations for Herod, King Agrippa I, but not the followers of the way. So you could see how they would not be among that group heralding him, and therefore he would have had issue with them. Knowing this would also explain why Luke felt it necessary to reassure Theophilus of the truth in all things that he had been taught concerning Yeshua as Messiah. Now here's where I would like to place before you that Luke was the same as Lucius in the New Testament. Lucius was indeed a Jew. This would be no different than Mark being called Marcus in the New Testament. He was called by Mark in some places. He was called Marcus in some places. Now, anyone that studies the Bible knows that it is not uncommon for people to be referred to by many different names. They had Greek names, they had Roman names. Earlier, they had Babylonian names and Hebrew names. So that is not uncommon. Mark is a shortened version of Marcus. Likewise, Luke could be a shortened version of Lucius. We read of this Lucius in Acts 13 and 1. Now there was at Antioch in the assembly that was there prophets and teachers, Barnabas and Simeon that was called Niger, and Lucius of Cyrene, and Manaen, the foster brother of Herod, the tetrarch, and Saul or Shaul. Romans 16 and 21, Timothy, my fellow worker, saluteth you, and Lucius and Jason and Sosipater, my kinsman. Now that word kinsman, if you look it up, it means a blood relative or a fellow countryman. So that means that Lucius was a Jew. And we know that Lucius, or Luke, traveled extensively. He was the right-hand man of the Apostle Paul when he did his missionary journeys. Luke was there with him, or Lucius was there with him. If we view the books of Luke and Acts from this perspective, then we will find it in a whole different light. We will find that Luke was a totally Jewish person who was a follower of the way, and he was writing to a purely Jewish high priest or former high priest of Israel. This would make the books of Luke and Acts purely Jewish in nature and not Gentile oriented at all. This does change everything. At least to me, it changes everything. The whole scoop of both books are Jewish in nature, Jewish culture, Jewish customs, and filled with the commands and statutes of the Torah of Yahweh. In Acts, we read a lot about the inclusion of the non-Jews into the sect of the way. They were grafted into the natural olive tree, which is Israel. The Apostle Paul explains this quite well in the book of Romans. Note that they were grafted into the natural olive tree and not the other way around. And yet modern church tries to take everything Jewish out of the equation. Paul explains that it's the natural root from the natural olive tree that gives the tree its life source. In addition, all throughout the book of Acts, we find the early disciples, including those non-Jewish believers who were part of the way, that they were keeping all the festivals of Yahweh, as well as they were meeting in synagogues. They were meeting in synagogues, Jew and non-Jew. In addition, the early disciples, the Jewish disciples, they were still going up to the temple every day. One thing that we fail to recognize in the book of Acts when it mentions these non-Jewish believers is that they were what was called in Hebrew God-fearers. They were already non-Jewish believers in the God that the Jews worshipped, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Study out that term, God-fearers. They were already practicing what we like to call Jewish things as they worshiped the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So it is not that the Apostle Paul, when he went out into the nations, if you study closely in the book of Acts, it is not that he went out and found some pagans and started preaching to them the very beginning concepts of what had traditionally been a Jewish religion. But no, he found the God-fearers in each community. And they were already in the synagogue along with the Jews. And it is those in the book of Acts that are mentioned that the Apostle Paul is teaching. And they are accepting his words that Yeshua is the Messiah. It is very important for every believer to study ancient Jewish records and history. The Bible cannot be understood accurately if this information is excluded. I hope that this lesson has shed some light on the Jewishness of Jesus, his first century disciples, and indeed the writings, including the book of Acts and Luke of the New Testament. Until next time, please join Our Ancient Paths on the website, ourancientpaths.org, on Facebook, on Instagram, and on YouTube, all under the name Our Ancient Paths. If you would like to donate to this ministry, you may do so on the website. And please, please, please subscribe to this channel on YouTube and give us your support. It means so very much. See you later. Shalom.